Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to SaveWithConrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from SaveWithConrad.com.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Conrad, are you ever going to let me introduce the show and say, welcome to my... No.
Yeah, let's do it right now. No. It would be fun. Here we go. I'll count you in. 3, 2, 1.
It's Double J, Jeff Jarrett, and I'm sitting here with my longtime podcast partner, Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World with none other than Double J himself, the world's greatest singer, the world's greatest entertainer, and the world's greatest podcaster. How's that, Conrad? How's that to kick things off as we close out the month of February and enter into the month of March? Because we are in, we'll call it mania season.
I like it. And I think you're now the official host of the show. I'm just the coach.
No.
I like it. This is fun for me. Hey, I want to mention too, as we are talking about WrestleMania season, man, we're circling the date. As folks are listening to this, we're exactly 1 month away from our April 1st Super Show. It is not April Fool's Day. Jeff Hardy is going to be on stage with us, telling us his story with a live mic, what has happened and what will happen next. More importantly, get your Hardy swag signed, man. That's right. Pictures, autographs, the ultimate VIP experience right before the doors open for general admission. And then we're going live on pay-per-view. So if you can't be with us there in Dallas, you can also join us live on Fight anywhere you've got a smart device. So not just here domestically, but internationally. And yes, you can watch it on demand. So maybe you want to go ahead and grab it and then watch it later. No big deal. Fight is your hookup. And by the way, you can do all of this at supershowlive.com. And Jeff, the rumor and innuendo is when you place a pre-order with Fight for the pay-per-view, you get a collectible trading card from Jeff Hardy. And I'm a big trading card guy, but I don't think there has been a Jeff Hardy trading card outside of WWE or TNA. This might be his first non-WWE, non-TNA trading card. You can't buy it anywhere, but it's your free gift when you pre-order the Fight broadcast over at supershowlive.com. So supershowlive.com is the place where you can get it. And of course, it'll be on Triller and Thuzio, but Fight is probably what you and I are most familiar with in our knitting circle, if you will. Check it out, supershowlive.com. Be there with us at the world famous Gillies. But if you can't, man, get that pay-per-view order in and make sure you pre-order, because if you order the day of, or if you order right before the event, you won't get the trading card. But if it's a pre-order, and I think it's by like March 16th, you get the Jeff Hardy trading card. Come on, Jeff. How cool is that?
Wow. We got a couple of weeks. It's what a buzz. It's going to be a lot of fun. God, I can't believe we're inside a month. I was in between Buffalo and New York at Batavia Downs, signing autographs this weekend. Lots of buzz. Saw some ad-free folks, and they were all buzzing about Jeffrey Nero Hardy. I got sort of iggyed and said, y'all got any more surprises? Because I know Conrad. He loves a surprise. And I said, well, just relax. We delivered the third man, Mr. Bischoff, and myself and you and Jeff Hardy and others. I just left it at that. They kept pressing me, and the guys circled through. There were some Steelers there and lots of Buffalo Bills, and it was pretty cool catching up with a lot of folks. I got to buzz them, gig them about the Music City Miracle, and there was a group of guys that circled back through the line, Conrad, and said, okay, look, I know you're not going to tell us, but will you give us a hint? And I said, absolutely not. And guess who about blurted out a few things? Miss Karen. Yep. I said, whoop, 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 whoop. She just, Conrad, on Christmas Eve, you ever had that aunt or relative, maybe mom, who just says, yeah, kids, open up all the presents on Christmas Eve. It's one. You can open up one, but you got to wait till Christmas morning. Are you a Christmas Eve opener, or your philosophy?
Well, Santa Claus comes Christmas morning, but my family did a little exchange on Christmas Eve. So if you got dad something, that happened on Christmas Eve. But if Santa Claus came to see you, well, that was Christmas morning.
Well, April 1st. It's not April Fool's Day. Don't be a fool. Another kind of day. It's going to be a lot of fun. Another
big announcement or two coming your way, but go ahead and make plans to join us. April 1st, supershowlive.com. And now let's talk about why we're here. Boy, it feels like we've covered, or I thought we had covered, a lot of the major moments from your quote unquote initial WWF run. But man, we're really picking up where we left off here. We talked about when you came back into the company in 95, but now we're talking about how you're starting 1996. And well, ultimately, you're going to leave the World Wrestling Federation. We move into 96 and you're on the road taking on Ahmed Johnson at the Rumble. On the house shows, you return and you're teaming with Sid, losing to Razor and Diesel at the Nassau Coliseum. 5,100 fans are there. And then you go on to team with Hunter in New Haven and lose to Razor and Diesel. It'll feel good to be back on the road with your clique again.
Oh, there we go. If you want to, at some point today, we're going to have a Four Horsemen discussion. There's a whole nother strategy I've just been bombarded with. You know, people really want to pick a bone with you on that, Conrad. I know that you have your Conrad cronies and Jarrett's not a horseman, but there's a whole nother flip side to that. But anyhow, during this time, when I reviewed the research and just thinking back during that time, you know, I had spent, 3 or 4 months and I'd been in the ring and working USWA. So I was in ring shape, and I had really, this is before I had any kids. So, I mean, it was a little late time, but we were in the fall and going into the winter. So a lot of gym time, Conrad. And yes, to answer your question, I was ready to get back on the road and get back in the swing of things. I'd kind of had a creative reset, and, you know, we often talk about brand, and I know branding and, you know, that goes along with SaveWithConrad.com and just your business mindset. But during this time, when you think about the real transition, because we'll call it the new generation had been around, but there was a lot of ebb and flow and brand identity and all that. So I was ready to jump back in. And when I did jump back in, I was only gone 6 months or so, from July to December-ish, January. The company, it was a unique time because the branding and the identity and kind of the roster was in flux. So what a transition period of time for the WWF.
It is interesting to think about the company, how it's just evolved. I mean, you go back to early 84 when Hulkamania is born, and the company looks and feels a certain way. You fast forward past maybe WrestleMania 3, and it feels like it's leveled up and it's bigger than ever. And they would ride that wave, and it would maybe peak at 89 with the whole Mega Powers Explode. But then in 90 with Warrior, it was down a bit. And 91 with the War and Sergeant Slaughter, it was down a bit more. In 92, it's so down that they're having trouble keeping guys engaged. And then there's this almost troubled waters period. I would think that's 93, 94, 95. But by 96, now with Nitro becoming a thing, it feels like there's new life being breathed into the business. Would that be fair to say from someone who was inside the business at the time?
I can remember hearing the live event strategy, and we were going to be in from the transition from 94 to 95. And in 95, we were going to be in Nassau, Newark, or the Garden once a month. We were going to be in Pittsburgh every 3 months, Chicago every 3 months, the West Coast. We were going to be in LA every once a month, but is Anaheim or the Forum or whatever, but just kind of the whole strategy. And to me, 94 was kind of a reset year, and 95, you can look at the houses, the nose began to come up, and we were building things, and it was just kind of a transition from, like you said, the Hulkamania run, and then it ebbed down, and then it began to ebb back up, I think, coming out of the steroid trial and all that kind of stuff, and the change from, I would call it, from Hulk to Brett and Sean, just the style and all that. So I think the nose started to come up in 95, and in 96, as the nose was coming up, boom, Nitro. And so Mr. Bischoff and Time Warner, they just started to put gas on the industry. But the identity of Nitro came out strong, and boom, off and running. That was their identity. WWF, not so much, but they were in that process of, I don't want to call it rebranding, but like the identity of, okay, who are the stars of today, not yesterday? Interesting how history repeats itself as well in our industry right now.
Yeah, and boy, that could be a huge other conversation. Let's move on. Let's talk about you working at Montreal Forum. You're in front of 8,000 paying fans there. In fact, there's more than 10,000 fans in the building. You're going to be teaming up with Hunter, and you're going to be in a losing effort to Razor Ramon and Savio Vega. That's an interesting pairing. I think a lot of fans even forget that originally in storyline, Razor and Savio were big pals. But you teaming with this aristocrat, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, that feels like an odd pairing. The supposed Nashvilleian or Nashvillian, if it is, country music singer with this, I don't know, society's elite and Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Kind of an odd pairing, but you're both bad guys, so I guess it works. What say you?
I can remember us teaming up, and at those times, Hunter, Paul, whatever you want to refer to him as, he had a robe and the collared and had that aristocratic look. And of course I had my cowboy hat and the Double J get up, but we were two characters, one from the North, one from the South, both arrogant, but I don't want to say drastically different, but I was the Southern arrogance and he was the blue blood North arrogance. So it fit. We didn't do it a lot, but I always enjoyed it because, Hunter never had a problem being a heel. And he had come up from WCW and, never a really identifiable gimmick, so to speak, persona, but I enjoyed these. And, Scott and Savio, Scott with his, we'll call it Southern Florida, Tommy Montana, gimmick persona, but then Savio coming in, they fit as a team. These were fun matches for sure.
I know the matches are going to be great. Just you've got four very, very capable wrestlers, but some of the personas, interesting. How did the locker room, the actual guys, after you had quote unquote, walked out on Vince McMahon, how did they receive you after the return? Could you tell that maybe the agents handled you different, the guys handled you differently, or at that point are the agents really just boys who have maybe aged out of in-ring action? So yeah, we're with you, Jeff. Or what was that like?
Well, I think the agents had a fiduciary duty, to toe the company line, but they were always great to me. I think unwritten, unsaid type deal, second, third generation. I came to work, knew that I had creative differences. If Vince says he's back, he's back. And that really went for most of the guys. Now, I wasn't naive enough then or now. I'm delusional, but sometimes naive. Look, I knew that I wasn't going to be, hey, let's throw a party. Double J's back. But my close friends and the folks that I work with, it was, all right, man, let's get back to work. Let's go out. And, another thing that's kind of unwritten, if a guy can get it done in the ring, it's one of those things that, you just say, all right, let's go to work. And Sid was in the equation a couple of times in matches and others, but me and Paul and Scott and Savio, and we'll go through some cards on here. They were a lot of fun. Goldust had entered into the picture. And it was a transition. It was obviously pre-Attitude Era days, but kind of the end of the new generation, and the gimmicks, the plumber, the hockey player, all that kind of stuff. Skip and Tom and that whole tag team. So it's funny to go back and kind of review and reminisce the very end of the real, I don't call them character days, but over the top characters. I don't know.
Occupational gimmicks. I mean,
there you go, Conrad. Occupational gimmicks. That's good.
It was just different, and we're trying to throw all of these characters into a bag. And in reality, what Vince is doing, in my opinion, in this era, this sort of,
I'm calling it that, occupational era.
Well, but I mean, specifically, you look back to, like, I recently just recorded an episode of DDP Snake Pit with Jake Roberts and Diamond Dallas Page. And if you're listening to this and you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to. I think I could argue it's our best video show over on YouTube, just because we've got Comeback Studios, as a backdrop and all of their tech on their side. I mean, it's a real production facility. Anyway, we had a whole conversation about Dusty Rhodes and the polka dots. And Jake was just adamant, it was a rib to put Dusty in polka dots. And I wasn't so sure about it, because to me, the rib is, here's Jake the Snake Roberts, who had been wearing karate pants and pull-up boots and is deathly afraid of snakes. Now we're putting him in neon pink tights and snakeskin boots that he's got to lace up, and now he's got to carry a 9-foot python to the ring. That sounds more like a rib to me than wearing polka dots to the ring. Coco Beware was an ass kicker in Memphis with one of the best drop kicks in the wrestling business. When he goes to Vince, hey, we need you to dye your hair and carry this fucking bird to the ring. That sounds more like a rib to me than polka dots. But I'm saying all that to say, I understand now, and I understood as a kid. All right, we got the Bulldogs. We can't just call them the Bulldogs. They need to carry a bulldog with them. They need these over-the-top robes that we're trying to sell action figures. We're trying to sell cartoons. We need these characters to be easily identifiable. In hindsight, look how stupid the $1 Million title was. A bunch of dollar signs with gold and fake diamonds on it, and he's got this glittery tearaway suit. In hindsight, with a giant dollar sign on the back, like he's fucking Richie Rich, the cartoon. Like, this is awful stuff. But boy, did those characters resonate. So now when he's trying, hey, we're going to make this guy Blue Blood, and this guy a country music singer, and this guy talks like Scarface, and he's got a gold razor here. So he's clearly selling cocaine, but we can't say that. I understand that we're trying it, but it does feel like, hey, what worked then ain't going to work now. And I think fans were like, maybe a little too tongue in cheek now. Maybe we had outgrown it as an audience. What do you think of that?
I'm just along for the ride on that soliloquy. Easy for me to say, but no, you're spot on to me. That it had, again, we can get into that discussion in around 2007, 8, 9, 10. I think you can get in that discussion right now, but the occupational gimmicks had run its course. It was been there, done that. It was, he's playing the role of that. It's inauthentic. As much as I love country music, and the Double J character came out of the box, and it with Bruce's creativity and Kerwin's eye for shooting the shot and the vignettes. And I'm using it because it's a personal experience, but other gimmicks that debuted and personas that got over. But by 96 and the raw emotion that, that Nitro was beginning to put out. But I'm just saying, you said the audience had been there, done that. I think when you watch TV and on the plane yesterday, I was getting to catch up on Ozark and the story and the twisting and all that. And we could go down Succession or Ozark, these kind of TV shows that are resonating now. it's, you go from Cheers to Seinfeld and Friends. And I mean, we could go all the way up to The Office and just the progression, Big Bang Theory, just how TV evolves. You just cannot. And you said something earlier today, Conrad, what got you to in business. Sometimes things get you to a certain level, but that's as far as they're going to get you. So if you don't evolve and turn the prism and, innovate. And that was the thing that by the time I launched DNA, I tried to hammer in everybody's brain. Now we had a lot of strikeouts, but some you got base hits and doubles and singles and triples. And the X Division, I think, was a grand slam. You got to innovate.
I was there at your very first TNA show in Huntsville. And when AJ Styles won the brand new title that you debuted, confetti fell from the ceiling and it felt like a major moment. So wow. I don't care what anybody says about, look at what AJ Styles is now. Nobody knew who AJ Styles was before June of 2002 here in Huntsville. So you definitely tried to do something different. And this era of the WWF feels like, hey, we're doing okay. We're serving our base, but we're not attracting new customers. And if they would have made Stone Cold Steve Austin Duke the Dumpster Drose, that shit wouldn't have worked either. It had to be a different. And by the way, not disparaging Duke. Everything in life is timing. Like, I'm not saying he couldn't have done it. I'm not saying that he had the skill set or the aptitude or the talent or whatever of Steve Austin, but I am saying sometimes in this entertainment industry that we're discussing today, buddy, timing is everything. And so look at what Kevin Nash did in WCW as Kevin Nash. Well, they had him as Oz and as Master Blaster and as Vinny freaking Vegas. It's the same guy. It's the same organization, but the timing was different. The presentation was different.
And Diesel.
Yes.
It literally, a truck driver's world champ? No, that ain't, sorry. That's not going to fly. It's the same guy, a 6'11" legitimate athlete who played pro basketball that had maybe not. Yeah, he's a movie star. So movie star looks and all that, but he's a truck driver. It did not resonate. The whole sort of undercurrent of this episode, Conrad, in so many ways was what worked in 95 did not work in 96. And Ahmed Johnson didn't help and timing didn't help. The injury that we're going to get to didn't help. But then at the end of the day, it was the changing of an era in so many ways for the WWF.
Let's talk about some more context from the era. You work with Ahmed in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, in front of 3,500. Ahmed gets the win. When you're getting ready for a big pay-per-view like the Royal Rumble, it feels like in this era, they would pair you with that guy a lot on the house shows. Are you trying to build what your pay-per-view match looks like? Does it almost become like a dress rehearsal?
Well, and look, Ahmed, and I know that I'm not on his favorite list, and he may or may not believe this, but I was coming back into the company and I knew that they put me with him to get the very best match out of him and try to teach him. Now, look, he was older than me, didn't have many years as far as in-ring work, but, and so I tried to figure out how can I have not just a passable match, a pretty good match with Ahmed. And so, yes, that was the mindset that Bruce and Pat and obviously Vince back in those days booking live events. But yeah, that was the whole mindset. Let's let these guys work out on the road. And by the time we ask people to pay, as in pay-per-view, to see this match, they've got it down. It's a good one. They've got their timing down. They've got spots down. They got false finishes. They can go tell a good story. So that's exactly what this era was. In Fitchburg, I remember that Good House. What do you have a number on what it did? I bet it was good.
3,500 folks.
That's probably a sellout. It's probably good.
I mean, yeah, that's decent. I'm not arguing that at all.
I'm trying to recall, but yeah, good little arena.
So let's talk about the actual pay-per-view itself. We're here at Royal Rumble 1996. You're opening the show for 2 Rumbles in a row. Of course, the prior year, you had your big moment with Razor Ramon. Now you get Ahmed Johnson. And I just want to take a time out right now here, because I get that as you and I are talking here in 2022, we've got a ton, and thank you guys for being a part of it. We've got a ton of smart listeners who were fans who grew up loving wrestling and now they're studying wrestling and they're trying to learn more. And we, as a group of quote unquote smart fans, have collectively decided, oh, Ahmed Johnson, LOL. But buddy, in this era, Ahmed Johnson was a breakout star. Ahmed Johnson was getting big pops from the crowd. He had a different look. It was something the WWF had not tried. He was different than. They didn't make him Ahmed Johnson, the gardener. They didn't make him Ahmed Johnson, the garbage man. He was not Ahmed Johnson, the plumber. He was just Ahmed Johnson, and he was an ass kicker with cool music who was representative of a fan base that they had probably not really keyed in on. And he looked like $1 million. I mean, let's just tell it like it is. Now, when the bell rang, was he the best wrestler? No, but a lot of the biggest stars of the 80s were not as well. And here we are in early 96. There's going to be a guy debut in September of 97 named Goldberg. He proved being a great wrestler is not required. You don't have to be this seasoned veteran. You just have to have intensity and a cool look. You got to be able to connect with the audience. That's most important. Ahmed Johnson was doing that here. And it's fun for us to go back and say, oh, it wasn't very good. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't something in Ahmed. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some bad stuff here today too, Jeff. But I'm sure you agree, wearing your promoter's hat, well, certainly Ahmed's worth a try. Look at how their fans have responded to him, right?
Yes. And that's what I'm saying is the identity. He wasn't a Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, that goes without saying, but his look, there's nothing that when he walked through the curtain that you didn't say, there's box office. He will connect that he's got a unique, but promo skills. It goes back to the emotional connection, but coming through the curtain, $1 million look. And it was a new era. I don't want to call it it just, and I understood while I was working with him. All right, let's Double J, get in there and get the very best match you can out of him. I looked on some of the cards going through this research, and I'm looking like, let me think if there's a point of discussion here. Who else could they have matched him up with? I'm sure there's a few, but I can see why Bruce and Pat and Vince said, yeah, let's put Double J with him.
So let's talk about the match itself. Meltzer says, Ahmed Johnson beat Jeff Jarrett by DQ in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Johnson is really green. The transitions from spot to spot were weak. Let me pause right there, Jeff. I know you're fixing to take a big sip, but I want to ask a question. I had the good fortune of sitting in a box for All In over here. And I got to sit in there with Sean Waltman. He came in for StarCast and wasn't doing anything on the show. So I said, hey, man, do you want to come sit with us? And sure enough, he did. And we got to watch a lot of the matches together. And one of them was Stephen Amell wrestling Christopher Daniels. And he said, man, he's got all the spots and stuff done. He's just got to get the transitions down. And it was fun just to hear a wrestler talk. And he could tell that I didn't respond and I was just letting it lay out. And I sort of looked at him like, there's more to that thought. And he says, that's where you really hone your craft, is knowing all the stuff in between. You know, figuring out how to do the moves is important, but not as important as how do I get from this to that? And that sort of explanation, I don't think anybody had ever said before, but I think when a lot of guys go to wrestling school, they probably are really excited about how to do the big moves, but it's the stuff in between that separates an opening match guy with a main event guy, right?
Well, when you say, hey, that guy can work, well, let me say this. When I think that, when I'm saying, hey, how's this guy? And I say, hey, Conrad, this guy, he can really work. That's really what I'm talking about. He knows how to carry himself from the time he comes to the curtain till how he gets in the ring, how he circles, how he locks up, forget all the moves. They're often referred to as transition. Some folks refer to things in a match called a rest hold. I used to just scratch my head and go, okay, I get it psychologically or intellectually why you want to say this guy's resting, but really what he's doing is working. And he's working, and I say that you are getting the audience engaged emotionally. So working can also be translated into hey, that guy knows how to connect emotionally with his audience. He's working the audience, not trying to say, oh, it's a work and he's corny. He's trying to pull the wool. No, 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 no. I'm saying he's given a lot of effort into honing his craft. So I'm going to work hard. And as a part of that work hard, it is convey emotion that this is exactly the roller coaster ride I want to take you on. So transitions, rest holds, learn how to lose, more importantly than learn how to win, all those kind of things. It goes with working. So yeah, good. That's why these podcasts are fun, Conrad. Sort of get granular in this kind of conversation. And who would have thought? Do you think my grandmother's rolling over in her grave saying, Jeffrey, what are you doing talking about working on a podcast? But it's okay. It's 2020.
No, I don't think she would think that. I think when we show her those disbursements on or around the 5th of the month, and she'd say, how many bumps did you have to take for that, baby? And you'd say, not a one, mama. I didn't even leave the house. I'm just saying.
Just saying, I love that. Yeah, but no, you know what I'm saying. It's yes. And so we started on this, and you're the one that told us how to build a watch. Says tell us what time it was. But Meltzer said, what did it say? His transition. Boy, he's green. What was Meltzer's comment? He's right.
Yes.
Ahmed could do the Pearl River plunge, and he literally could look at the audience at the hard camera or look at a handheld and connect emotionally. But going from A to B to C to D all the way through the match, he didn't have the experience. He just didn't. And that's what takes time.
Let's jump into it. Meltzer would continue to say, Jarrett tried to carry it, but it's hard when nobody buys Johnson being in trouble because he's so physically impressive and doesn't know how to sell to overcome the impressive size. So let's stop right there, because we can get a little more granular about in-ring work here. There's something to that. Like,
there's a lot to that. It's kind of what I just said.
I believe from a modern wrestling piece of business, it would be really hard for Charlotte to be a babyface in WWE. I bring this up because I saw a lot of fans say, hey, maybe what we should do is, since fans are already sort of rejecting Ronda Rousey, maybe Charlotte becomes the baby and Ronda's the heel, because Ronda, I think, would be a great heel. However, it's so hard once that program is over to imagine Charlotte as a babyface. She's bigger than everybody. How can she be the sympathetic babyface if she's bigger than everybody and has more title wins than everybody? Like, at that point, how can you be an underdog? How can we feel sympathy for you? It's sort of like, you know, nobody feels bad for somebody crying tears that they wipe away with a Louis Vuitton handkerchief. You know, I just don't know how that would be. And so for a new guy like Ahmed Johnson, it probably is incredibly hard, because what got you here is this big, impressive body. But now that you've got it, figuring out how to make that work as a sympathetic babyface, that's a square peg, round hole.
We're going to go in a rabbit hole and talk about Charlotte.
Let's do it.
When you look at her skill set, and you know what I think about her skill set, I think she's the very best. A guy asked me at an autograph signing not long ago, if you had one talent and you were going to start a wrestling company with, just one out of everybody out there, who would you start the company with? And I looked at him and I said, Charlotte Flair. And he looked back at me and goes, what? I said, okay, tell me. In 2022, think of all the talent out there, and you only get one draft choice. You only get one. Who is it? Look on AEW roster, look on, you know, WWE and all this kind of stuff. And here's kind of at the very top of the list. Yes, her looks, her lineage, her skill set, her interview, blah, blah, blah. But also in 2022, when you have a Penn State transgender swimmer winning records and how society is, how come you don't think Sami Zayn could get heat on Charlotte and the whole world wouldn't want to see Charlotte kick Sami Zayn's ass?
Well, there's that. And you and I have talked about that, though, but we're a little weird. We both think Charlotte should be wrestling dudes.
I don't think that's weird. It wasn't weird in 1999 when China was kicking my ass. And I'm not saying keep Charlotte 12 months out of the year wrestling guys. I'm not saying that. I completely concur with you in the female division, but I all think Ronda could be a heel in this instance. That's a whole different, but for the most part, Charlotte's a heel. But on the one-off, occasionally for a big Mania moment or a big SummerSlam moment, Charlotte wrestling for the Intercontinental title against the Sami Zayn. Are you kidding me?
Oh, well, they would boo that, just the positioning. But I get what you're saying. There is a way to do it. And I hope that when they do it, they bring you back and cover your ass in flour one more time. Assistant manager for the 38th time. Here we go.
Oh, yeah. But go ahead. Amen.
Yeah, after a sidewalk slam called a spine buster by McMahon, although it's not the same move as the one Arn Anderson does, Johnson did a dive over the top rope and crashed into the guardrail in the process. What do you remember seeing this? Now, I want to give everybody context. This is January 96.
Yes.
This is not Wednesday night in March of 2022. We see that every week now, and it's commonplace. But to see that happen in January of 96 is a big deal. And it's even bigger when you consider that he is not, for lack of a better term, a luchador. This is a heavyweight, capital H.
He's 260, 280, maybe 300. And I can remember said, I mean, what we kind of need here is my size, all the, we need to tell the story that you stop yourself. And what Dave's referring to as far as transitions and not knowing how to work that style, Ahmed could do this exact spot. I'm going to crash and burn on my own. And the only thing Double J did was get out of the way. And then I act like I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, when really I was chicken shit and moved from the dive. But that's kind of the whole magic of it. Ahmed could do this move in a devastating, holy shit moment. Like you said, in 1996, a guy 280 diving over the rope, but then crashed and burned. And then our transition, as X-Pac refers to, wasn't there. Yeah. All the emotion was just zapped out. I tried to get mileage, but he comes to his feet and I got to run him into the post. It's just the selling, the emotional connection never quite got there, ever, in his career, in my opinion.
Let's keep going here. Johnson then did a full somersault splash off the top and missed, selling his knee. Jarrett used the figure 4, but Johnson reversed it. He tried it a second time, but Johnson kicked him out of the ring. Jarrett came in with a guitar and came off the top, smashing it on Johnson's head for the DQ. The guitar shot sounded great. Johnson kneeled over from the spot, but recovered before Jarrett was back in the dressing room and got up and ran after him, but never caught him. Star and a quarter. Top rope guitar shot. Do you remember who the agent was on this and how that creative came to be?
I wish we did. I heard Cornette referred to, he had agent reports, everything. Conrad, I'm surprised the ad-free family, we don't have access to agent reports. We should. But no, I don't remember. I don't remember, but I do remember being super frustrated. If memory serves me correctly, I don't think it was right on the spot, but it was sometime during this night. I'm like, Bruce, if we're going to get a DQ off a guitar shot, can't we at least get off the shot and go to the next segment without him getting up and running off? Like, he's a cyborg, which there's no sympathy on a guy. I mean, I get a punch isn't going to keep him down, but maybe a gimmick, but nope. And I kind of think that's in a lot of ways the history of Ahmed's career. He was never vulnerable. He just wasn't. And I think it hurt his emotional connection with the audience.
So let's talk about when you come back through the curtain. Most of us listening to this are never going to do that. We're never going to wrestle a big match on a pay-per-view in front of a big sold out crowd and come back through the curtain. And now here we are in real life, essentially. And there's Vince or Bruce or whoever's there, but you get to connect with that other guy. What was it like? Do you remember? Take me back. Maybe let's visualize. You walk back through the curtain.
Disappointment, man. When I read the notes, I was super disappointed. And I don't want to say at this exact moment, but certainly within the 24 hours, I'm like, that ain't Scott Hall. feeling when I came through the curtain. Because when you work with Scott or Razor during that time, you just like, all right, man, that was a roller coaster ride and the people enjoyed it. I knew that the match didn't get over like it could have. That's the disappointment. The old analogy that I'm sure I shared with because I've shared it working with big guys. Do you know how and why the Hulk up in Hulkster days and Jerry Lawler, he did it pulling the strap down?
Yeah.
But the reason that works, Ahmed, there's really there's only one reason it works is because he takes them to an emotional low that you have to Hulk up. If you never go low, Ahmed, you're never, there's no reason. They're like, okay, he's fine. There's no sympathy. And I'm not saying you got to, but just.
It was the Goldberg thing. I mean,
I was thinking about that and I didn't want to interrupt you. Bill Goldberg, for the first however many months, Eric didn't have him out there long enough to people say, oh, they wouldn't say this, but they would feel it. Oh, he didn't know how to do transitions. Bill did 3 moves and you were out. You didn't have to worry about transitions with Bill in those early days. I mean, it was
15 months of buzzsaws, never losing, crushing folks left and right. But then I had this conversation with Kevin Nash once. Where do you go from there? Like, eventually he has to lose. He can't just win for fucking ever.
I agree.
Because even if he wins forever, and by the way, that's not pro wrestling. Jerry Lawler won that Memphis belt 92 times because he lost it 91. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yep.
So people would have gotten bored with him just buzzsawing people forever, because on some level you're paying for pay-per-view now and you're going to get a 3-minute match. And yes, it worked for Tyson for a while, ... until it didn't.
Yep.
And it's sort of the same thing here. And I get that that's an issue, but how was Ahmed? Was he tough to work with or deal with? I mean, I know he's green, but when you're trying to have conversations with him about, hey, we could do this, we could do that, does he seem receptive? I only bring that up because we've heard about guys on the other side, not trying to throw shade at anybody, but Arn Anderson mentions when Van Hammer came into WCW, he says, all right, guys, I'm here to save the company. I'm WCW's Ultimate Warrior. And he didn't know any better. And I believe in my heart that Van Hammer didn't know why that was offensive or how that would piss guys off or rub them the wrong way. He didn't know any better. Somebody above him in an office at Turner said, here's what we got in mind for you. Here's what we want you to be. Here's what we want you to do. Was Ahmed, did he have somebody in the office sort of communicating that to him, or was he receptive to your, hey man, what if type of deal?
So being in a car, making towns since 86, I can't tell you how many times I heard from Jerry Jarrett or others in that the only way you learn, nothing replaces experience. Getting in the ring, rep after rep, rep after rep, rep after rep, and you kind of get it by osmosis and trial and error. And I knew that when I was talking to Ahmed or trying to coach him or teach him or whatever it may be, he had his guard up. I'm at the big time. If I'm already getting a paycheck from WWF, I already know everything. I don't have to learn. So the music analogies, he never played the bars. He never played the small nightclubs. He came right in and was, at Madison Square Garden. So I can't say I had the word compassion, but I understood that about 90% of what I'm trying to convey, he's not going to listen. That's one thing. Then the other part of this was, I mean, whoever he was riding in the car with was going to give him their opinion. His agent was going to give him opinion, and it's not the same agent every night. Vince was going to give an opinion. Bruce was going to give an opinion. Pat was going to give an opinion. Jeff, his opponent, was going to give an opinion. So he had so many different things being told at him. Look, I at this time, so I'd been wrestling, 9 years, 10 years. I knew that he just only ring time changes that mentality, and that's it. And so I did everything I possibly could and never really took offense to it, knowing, well, doing the best we can, but that was the shits. It was such that, especially this pay-per-view match, I was super disappointed because I just knew it could have been so much better.
So it's really hard to see who the showcase is for here. I mean, it's just a tough match. Square peg, round hole. But is this the first time you've actually connected with a guitar shot over the head?
For WWF, I believe so. Yes. I'd done it in Dallas and Billy Travis and different angles, I think. But yes, WWF, I believe this was the maiden guitar shot. And who knew that Moolah was going to join that ranks, and Gary Coleman and Beetlejuice and Matt Cardona. And
so when you say who knew, you didn't know. Like, you weren't thinking, man, this could be my thing. You thought it was just a finish for a match.
Pretty much, like, just because it's a gimmick. Would Vince, I'm thinking creatively, I'm not sure Vince is going to go with the guitar that I'm going to carry to the ring every time. Correct.
We had seen a guitar over the head, of course, before. Honky Tonk Man had done it a decade before. Were you concerned that, oh man, that's somebody else's gimmick? Or did that not even cross your mind? No,
the Double J persona was all about, because I had been on Raw and played the electric guitar or picked at it like I was going to sing. And, I had sung it in your house and been on stage. I was a singer. I was, and part of my shtick was world's greatest singer, world's greatest entertainer, blah, 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 blah. So I didn't really think anything about the honky tonk analogy or any of that, none.
By the way, the Torch gave it the exact same rating, this match at the Royal Rumble, a 1.25 stars.
Oh, I thought it might have been a 5-star. I wasn't sure.
He says the match told a story, but the finish was lame. The guitar shot should have come after a clean finish. In hindsight, do you think the match would have been better had you been counting the lights? Is it more satisfying to the audience?
If he beat me, then a guitar shot?
Yeah, get your heat back, Jones.
Probably more resolution for the audience, yes.
Yeah. Ahmed has, and there's no other way for us to talk about it other than to talk about it. He said some things over the course of the years where he's done scattered little shoot interviews here or there, basically saying he didn't enjoy working with you, and even hinted around that, well, maybe you were racist.
Oh, God.
Which, my goodness, I've never heard anyone say about you ever at all anywhere. I don't even think you have to respond to that, but it does feel like sour grapes. Like, did you know you had a problem with Ahmed? Did it feel like you guys were oil and water, or is this, in hindsight, he's just frustrated with maybe how his wrestling life finished and yours continued?
I'll comment on the racist thing. If anybody knew me, growing up, my best friend was African-American. When I lived with my mom, it's such nonsense. But here's kind of how I looked at my relationship with Ahmed, because again, I'd been around dressing rooms since I was 12. I thought that I had the same relationship with Ahmed that basically everybody else did, that here's a guy that $1 million look, checks all the boxes, could make a fortune in this industry, but he's going to be his own worst enemy until he's not. And if that is going to change, it's entirely up to him. And look, you look at Jim Hellwig. He wasn't really a locker room favorite when he came to Tennessee, and Dingo Warrior out in Dallas, and then he got up north. But you gotta, and I know he's not everybody's favorite, but at one time, look, he learned how to work and get over and made it work for him, and is a different era and all that. But I never thought Ahmed, I guess you could say, singled me out and wanted to say those kind of comments about me. I kind of got the feeling that he felt that way about everybody.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I don't remember him having, now look, I'm not going to say I never rode with him, but I didn't see him have a good relationship with anybody. And I'm not knocking per se.
He's just a loner, maybe.
What my perception of it all was, I never thought he singled me out like, hey, I don't like Double J. I never, that's my delusion though, maybe, but I never thought that. I just thought
he wasn't enjoying his wrestling experience.
But here's the problem that I always thought. Why wouldn't he think that? He got hired and he's working in Madison Square Garden. say, hey, I must know what I'm doing, or Vince wouldn't have hired me.
Of course, that's logical.
That's the problem. To this day, I think that's the problem, is that he never got a real understanding of the industry. And look, he's not the only one, and certainly won't be the last one. There's guys in the industry today that really don't understand how to have a 20 or 30-year career. And then if you want to have a 3-year career and do this or do light bulbs or get in and get out, more power to you. But I always viewed it, this business, as a business, and I wanted to have a lengthy career. So looking at it through those prism, I got lucky. Ahmed never looked at the business, in my opinion, as a business.
You told me a story once before off air where you had a quote unquote old timer say something like, Jeff, do you want to do this for 30 years? And he gave you some advice. Can you share that with us?
Oh gosh, which one is that?
We'll come back to it. So you're not on Raw the next night, but you are on Superstars the next day. Any idea why? Is that just not enough time for TV for everybody?
So we were still doing 1 hour Raws during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That bingo. I mean, you know, you can tell by the finish, Double J and Ahmed, neither one of us went over. So we were both kind of, I don't even want to say moving up the card. We were just on the pay-per-view for exposure and character development. We weren't a part of the 5 segments that were coming the following night. God, man, that takes you back. Superstars taping. The syndicated show was still rocking and rolling during those days.
Yeah, man. And at those tapings in San Jose, you take on Razor Ramon and you lose when 1-2-3 Kid attacks Razor for the DQ. Kid's weapon of choice for this attack, you might ask. Baby stroller.
Of course.
This is old school Memphis, is it not?
Well, before you did research, do you even remember them turning 1-2-3 Kid heel on his mentor?
Yes.
See, of course I remembered it when I refreshed my brain, but I'm like, oh yeah, they did try that. That didn't quite work. Again, transition, identity issues going on.
Is there any wonder that Scott Hall is receptive to a WCW offer? More money, less dates, and no baby strollers?
Bingo.
Ahmed makes the save from you guys double teaming him. Do you just assume at this point, well, they're probably going to set up some tag matches? Like it feels that way to me.
For sure. And so I came back, they announced it in November-ish. I did the interview in December with Ahmed, I think, in the King, and that was a stutter start, and they introduced Manny, and that was a whole debacle. But I got to Royal Rumble, and I was hoping win, lose, or draw that our program would be over, but it wasn't. We had the non-finish, and then the following night, we're still sort of my dance partner, or at least in the dance circle, is Ahmed. I could remember going, okay, now we're going to do some tags. You know, I was kind of married to Ahmed during this time.
So then we wind up seeing you be at a taping where Ahmed Johnson beats 1-2-3 Kid by DQ, but it's with your interference. You come to ringside, attempt to come off the top rope with a guitar shot, but Ahmed catches you. Razor comes back in for the save, and Kid winds up breaking your guitar over Razor's back. This is an interesting little, I don't know, the way we tie everybody together. Do you remember it ever even being discussed that maybe Ted DiBiase might be with you? Because, and I only ask because he was managing Kid at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it was again, and not far from this is it going on right now that he's managing Steve is
yes.
Ringmaster.
Yeah.
I mean, so Teddy was the, the Hulkamania area, the golden years era, the $1 Million Man. And now he was managing folks. So at least, yes. I mean, I think Teddy probably accompanied in tag matches us to the ring a couple of times, but yes, but nothing that he was going to be put specifically with me. No.
So let's talk about White Plains, Baltimore, and MSG. You're going to work all three, putting Ahmed over. And this time in MSG is going to be your last visit here until June of 98. Where are you at in your head? Are you thinking you're on borrowed time? And I mean, are you enjoying this, or do you just think I just got to ride this contract out?
No, I mean, again, so July 95, me and Road Dogg walk out. You know, I had some reset, retime, and got my head in the game, back in the game, and took a little, I guess really a reset, but I was in the gym like crazy. You know, again, pre-kids, and did a little USWA stuff, but there was no doubt in my mind that the territories, I don't want to say that I said they were dead, but I wanted to make money. I mean, I'm in my mid-20s, and I'd done 7 years in the territory. I wanted to make some money. And look, I love being on Madison Square Garden or the Baltimore Arena or Fitchburg, Mass in good houses. Maybe not those Canadian runs, but I mean, I loved it and loved the money coming in. But I'd be sitting here lying my ass off if I didn't tell you, I wanted to move up that card. I was, I guess you could say, fully expecting to move up that card. I knew that there was like I said, there was a time during this time, Conrad, I'd left, and maybe you could say I was a top heel or a number 2 heel, whatever. But in your house too, I left in a hell of a spot. I wanted to get back there as quick as I possibly could and bust my ass, because I just felt I was ready to get back to sea level and then blast through that. That was my mindset during this, we'll call it early spring of 96. I could not wait. I really wanted it to take off.
So you're announced as taking on Ahmed at the Louisville Gardens for the next In Your House, but the match is dropped quietly from the card, and instead it's replaced by Hunter and Duke Drosay. Boy, this is not a good sign. How'd you hear that news?
I don't even remember hearing it. And I probably, look, I wish I had like exact recall, but I believe we ought to ask Bruce one day. He may have a little recall on this. I believe that the agent reports kept coming in night after night, and whether it was Jack Lanza or Chief Jay Strongbow or whoever would say something to the effect, Double J, you're trying, but it is what it is. And I have a feeling that the agent reports got back to Vince, Bruce, and Pat, and they're like, hey, we did the Royal Rumble match, but let's not take this match to pay-per-view again. That's what I recall, and I would be relieved at that it's better. Don't go to that well. It's not going to do Ahmed any good, not do me any good.
So you're still working with Ahmed when you visit Happy Valley in Penn State. Ahmed has in his corner that night Kevin Conlon, an all-time or an all Big Ten lineman at the time, and he's working against you here. And I guess these are the little things that at the time the WWF didn't really get a lot of credit for, but that's probably something that you took note of with your future promoter hat, right?
Well, early, maybe even before I broke in, Jerry Lawler and actually my grandmother would be one of the lessons, that they would get a local coach or a local politician. The mayor's going to be, special guest referee, but he'd be on the floor and you'd have it's smoke and mirrors and added attractions and something to tie to the local audience that you go, oh, I didn't know I was going to get to see this. There's the guy that I see at the grocery store, or the gas station every day. And so these kind of little promotions, they have always worked in the promotional game. I mean, still in Nashville today, you'll hear a big headliner country music artist come to town and, oh my gosh, they had this as a special guest and it's whatever it is. Those kind of little tricks, it's giving the audience what they expect to see and then a little something extra. It works.
So there we're working with Ahmed at the Spectrum in Philly. At the same time, though, you're working for the USWA. And this is interesting because, boy, wrestling's fun. You're a heel here in the World Wrestling Federation, working with super over babyface Ahmed Johnson in big markets, Madison Square Garden, Philadelphia. But back home, you're working for the USWA and you're a babyface. Is that challenging? I mean, it does feel like we're hitting the audience. And again, I realize it's just one part of the country, but when they watch the big TV show, you're a bad guy. They watch the local TV show, you're a good guy, and you're having to sort of go back and forth. Is that that feels like it could be like writing with your left hand at times?
It just didn't. I mean, look, we're actors, actresses. It is what it is. But I still think wrestling is that unique form of entertainment. It didn't resonate. But again, my father and Vince had the relationship. Tennessee was, I guess, at this point, the last territory that was still running weekly towns and weekly TV, and the whole Texas thing that we've covered had long been over, and it was Memphis, Louisville, and Evansville, and Nashville, and still trying to make it work and develop talent. But by this time, like you just said, I was back on the road full time.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to do was, on my quote unquote days off, go work for the family promotion.
But you had to, yeah.
For little to no money. Yes, I did.
Get even more from the hottest new podcast going, My World with Jeff Jarrett, over at adfreeshows.com. Let me get granular here for a minute, folks. Not only can you get the entire My World episode library with 0 ads, new episodes come your way each week early, ad-free, and on video starting at just $9 a month. We've also got tons of exclusive My World bonus content waiting for you, plus unique interactive experiences with your old pal, Double J. You get to jump on and ask Jeff questions, and if you joined us in Chicago this year for Top Guy Weekend, you got to hang out the entire weekend. 100% the best value in all of wrestling. Strut on over to adfreeshows.com right now to sign up.
So February 14th and 17th, there's some big shows in Memphis. It's on the 14th that we have the USWA show, where it's headlined by you and Jerry Lawler teaming up to take on The Undertaker and Bret Hart. Think about that, really. The Undertaker and Bret Hart are at a fucking USWA show. Okay. On the 17th, the WWF is running the Pyramid, which is a huge venue in Memphis that eventually would hold Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis. These days it holds fishing lures, but whatever. When you have the long-rooted, deep tradition of Memphis wrestling intertwined with the WWF, does it get like a little messy? Because on the one hand, they want to cheer their local hometown guys, but what little kid wants to boo the freaking Undertaker?
That's the deal. Didn't work.
Yeah.
Big round hole. It is what it is. But it's funny to look back on time and look at how we were so ingrained in two different audiences, but were they really? Not really. That was our mindset. We got a Memphis wrestling audience that comes to the weekly shows, and then you have the glitz and glamour of the WWF that's a casual wrestling audience.
So we also see Lawler versus Bret headlining a February 17th show for the WWF in a cage. This is, I realize it's really common to talk about now, but this is kind of some almost Forbidden Door stuff right here, is it not? Like, yeah. That's not something you would expect to see.
Well, the whole creation of the Mr. McMahon character, I mean, when you really think about that Forbidden Door and how things evolved, and look, that on the Twitter of My World Pod just posted a booking sheet or a card or something like that, but I was looking at different talent that were coming in the doors of WMC TV. Randy Savage, the narcissist Lex Luger, Giant Gonzalez, different names like that, look, the Forbidden Door would be Kurt Hennig. The not Forbidden Door, Kurt Hennig challenging Jerry Lawler. But when you look at something like a WWF talent coming in, it was definitely like, oh, wow, they're here. So, very Forbidden Door-ish.
So the show that we're talking about, you and Lawler taking on Undertaker and Bret, only draws 1,100 fans for a total gate of $7,800. I know this was probably done as a favor to your dad and Lawler, but still, this has to be disappointing when it's only a $7,800 gate and you got Lawler fresh off TV, you fresh off TV, Undertaker and Bret, and it's in Memphis. I'm sure your dad at this point, although he's disappointed in this one show, he's got to think, buddy, we're a long way from the early 80s. Memphis wrestling is
yes,
circling the drain.
Oh, and not a lot to circle. I mean, it was out of gas for sure.
On the 16th, you wrestle Ahmed in Nashville. You're announced as the USWA champion. Get the win this time by count out. The show at the Pyramid on the 17th had 7,500 fans. This is the WWF show. But this is where things get challenging. The Observer would write, Jeff Jarrett suffered a serious back injury on February 17th in Memphis against Ahmed Johnson. He was carried out of the ring and hospitalized. He's out of the hospital, but no word as to when he'll be back. Wade would write, Jeff Jarrett suffered a fluke back injury on February 17th in a WWF card in Memphis. He leaped off the ring apron to hit Ahmed with a forearm, and his back went out. He's had back problems since suffering an injury in a 92 car wreck. He had no feeling in his leg immediately after landing on the floor and was taken in an ambulance to the hospital. He is now home, but bedridden. The timeline for his return to the ring is day to day. Walk us through this night. Here you are in your home away from home, Memphis, Tennessee, but not a USWA show, a WWF show. We're at the Pyramid, the big building. Kind of exciting, I'm sure, even if you don't have your favorite opponent. And it feels like, if this is correct, it's a rather routine move. It's not anything that's particularly dangerous or out of the ordinary, but, you know, that's why this is professional wrestling. You tweak yourself and, woo, you're hurting for certain, or so it reads. Take me through that night. What happened?
I'll even back up 24 hours. So you got to kind of think of, I'm the USWA champion. I'm in my actual hometown of Nashville at the quote unquote big building, the Municipal Auditorium. It's not the fairgrounds. I'm working for the WWF and I'm entering the ring as a champion. Yes, Ahmed was my opponent, but that was a kind of a pretty cool moment. Just, you know, boy from Timber Hill Drive, basketball player, had sort of worked his way up. And here he is, the champion. And the people in Nashville gave it, actually, even I was a heel, but a better reaction than because they did the introduction, USWA champ, you know, whatever, a better reaction than I thought, because I was a heel. Go to Memphis, same type scenario. And Conrad, I have done that move with Ahmed probably every match. It was a clothesline. He'd take the bump outside. On the pay-per-view, he did the big crash and burn. So maybe on this, I don't know, if I drop kicked him and he rolled out. Anyway, it's just a running clothesline. I'd dive off the second and clothesline him down. He was always so big and all that, but this wasn't his at all. And when I landed with my right leg, it was, I mean, I can still remember the flames shooting out my rear end. And, you know, Conrad, I don't know, it was the week after Game Changer. I didn't do the exact same thing because that was my hips tweaking, but I had a little back spasm. And I have no idea why I get those sometimes, but literally when I look back on this time frame was when I told myself no more, because I had tried and tried and tried to get to 240. I was probably 230. The highest I ever weighed on a scale was 238. And I was trying to, just kind of the dumb mindset, but I was trying like crazy to get 240. And when my back spasmed and my hips, and it's kind of ready, you had back pain?
Nope.
Tear will come to your eye in a heartbeat.
My wife does though.
Oh, it's, I mean, I know there's all kinds of different pain, but back pain is a different kind of pain that will make your eyes well up. And Road Dogg used to look at me going through, airports. He'd say, Jeffro, you kind of cockeyed today, aren't you? And my hips would be out and all that. But yeah, I threw my back out. It's really, I came to understand a back spasm, L4 and L5. On this one, L3 actually got sort of tweaked and everything. The first time that I'd ever been to a real sports physical therapist and all that. But it hurt like a SOB, and they said, only time will heal this. So I went from whatever that was, re-entering, so December of 95, thinking I was going to work with Ahmed for about 6 weeks, still working with him. But I just was like, all right, let me just get to Mania and get this thing back on track. And then this happened. It sucked.
Any blame to pass around for Ahmed Johnson? It feels like in this era, injuries just followed him, but this one doesn't feel like it has anything to do with it.
Literally, I'd done the move probably every match. If I mean, I'd done it with others. I used to do it with Scott every night. I just run down the apron, close line a guy off the top, land on my feet, do my old look right into a hard camera if it's TV, or look right on the front row. I've done it over and over and over. When I landed on my right side, it just boom, and that's it.
So the next day is in your house in Louisville. Of course, your match had already been removed from the card, but what were the plans supposed to be for you on that show? Anything at all? Did you hear?
I don't think anything. I was kind of in that gray area. Like I knew that, okay, I've got to, and I don't want to say it was like Triple H and the curtain call that you had to, make amends and all that, because obviously that happened afterwards. But I knew there was going to be a sort of a time frame to get readjusted and get my feet back under me, so to speak. But there was no angle laid out, no program laid out. All that I'd sort of received and understood was, we've got you with Ahmed right now. I'm like, ugh. Okay, that's not really going up the card, but it is what it is.
So the big threat from this back injury is always, well, if you don't work, you don't get paid. But Kevin Nash has been out front and saying the reason he was interested in some of this sweet Ted Turner money is because you never knew what type of year you were going to have until you got your WrestleMania payoff. Because sometimes the payoff, especially the pay-per-view payoffs, they were just arbitrary.
Yep.
I mean, who are you to say it's too low or too high? It just is what it is. And sometimes you can go argue for it at your own risk. But now when you're down with this back injury, just based on the timing, it has to be the first thing in your mind. Damn it, I'm going to miss my WrestleMania payoff, right?
Bingo. And I knew, I don't want to say that I had momentum. I was definitely not delusional enough to think I had momentum, but I was back in the grind, and you can either get put on the Garden card or not. So I was on the Garden card. I was on Boston. I was wherever it may be. Things were churning in the right direction. Churning is the appropriate word, because grinding. But I knew right then, I'm like, oh my God. Because Mania was in LA this year, right? I think coming up. Yeah.
Anaheim. Yeah. Anaheim.
Yeah. So yeah, I knew, okay. Game, set, match.
What were the doctors telling you? You just need to rest. There's nothing to do.
So I went and got the MRI, but what's the other one outside of that?
CAT scan?
Maybe a scan, some type of scan. But anyway, and that doctor came in and said, hey, I'm going to get you with this sports physical therapist. And I'm like, I'm going to my chiropractor. And he goes, no. You, and I'm like, he goes, you got all kind of muscle spasms. That's the first time that I'd really listened to a guy and said, look, either you're going to listen to me or not. I have a lot of athletes come in here, think they're going to stretch this thing out, think they're going to sit on the couch and they're going to heal up. He said, I'm going to try to teach you how to sleep. He actually gave me sleep pointers. And I don't even want to call them stretching exercises, because they were really just resting. I use them to this day. But it's the first time that I'm like, all right, listen to it, because I had gone after the injury. I bet I had gone maybe 2 weeks, at least a week or so. And it wasn't better at all. I'd get out of bed, pull my, hobble to the bathroom. I mean, I didn't do anything, but I was laying wrong. I was sitting wrong. The bulge in the disc were just there. They call it the jelly. Anyway, it was a mess, and I wouldn't get any better. Chiropractor told me, who's Dr. Tim, my buddy, he literally said, you need to start listening to this guy. Just look, you've got to heal this up. And I did. And probably I knew radical change inside of a week. And then I stayed with him for 6 weeks. So First time that I'd ever seen a prescription, ever heard of okay, this is what this does. The Somas like medically taking them. This is what it's for. You're not drinking alcohol. You're actually taking them what it's for. And he's like, I don't want you to do this unless you're in really bad pain, but I want you to sleep this way. So, yeah, it was an education process.
So you took this is the first time you took Somas and it was to sleep, or you took it the right way?
Took it the right way for back pain. For let me say back spasms. Like you just need to not do anything. The guy was just like adamant. Don't go to the gym. Don't do anything. I don't even want you walking. Because I was like, do I do this? Nothing. Do these exercises that I tell you 3 times a day, and that's it.
When we hear about Somas, more often than not, it's a WWF conversation. Yep. This new generation era, was that really the first time you were introduced to?
No, I mean, obviously the year before I had seen them.
I'm saying here in the WWF, though, it was a Soma culture.
Yeah.
So, there's the old territory days, guys would have the left-handed cigarettes and beer as we went down the road. And that evolved a little bit. Some of that still exists, I'm sure. But I'm not saying it was a WWF issue, but it feels like when we hear guys talk about Soma specifically, they were under contract at the WWF at the time, more so than anywhere else.
The pharmaceuticals in 94, 95, 96 were Somas and pain pills.
Yeah.
You know what? And I'll say there was, I don't even, what's the Valium classification? Narcotic, hell, I don't know, but you know what I mean? It was uppers, downers, and all that. That's all that. But I had never, this is not even funny at all, but I'd never really heard somebody take them for the right reason. And the doctor was like, hey, this, and I asked the sports therapist guy, like, what do you think about it? He said, oh no, I'm telling you, you're going to get fatigued, and what you're going to want to do is, and I'm like, he says, I want you to take this. I'm like, okay.
It's crazy to think though that, and listen, I'm not sitting here in judgment of anybody. That's a whole nother addictions thing is a whole nother conversation for another day. I'm just trying to, it felt like a WWF issue. And I wondered, is that because largely it became a necessary evil to work this crazy, grueling schedule that you had at times? Guys had to have something to just make it happen. And you hear that in other areas of entertainment too, where this just becomes essentially your road diet. But almost taking too much of this, over medicating or street pharmacies, if you will. I don't think outside of wrestling, I've ever heard anyone say the phrase Soma shakes, but it was like, oh, that guy's got the Soma shakes. It was just like, oh, he must have like a low grade fever. Well, that sounds pretty fucking, if a guy's shaking like that conversation, I never really heard outside of the WWF.
Now, hindsight's 2020. But as I view it today, but back then, this is just, we're doing a time warp. And Road Dogg will tell you during this time, that's a big issue of the 95 walkout. If you pop positive for pot, you were fined, strike one, fined and suspended, strike 2, 3 grounds for termination, strike 3, whatever it may be. So every performer, I call it the adrenaline dump now. You get all psyched up, you go to the ring, you go out and have a very physical match on a brick floor, those rings back then. But anyway, you have a physical match, you've got a ton of adrenaline going. When it's over, the adrenaline dump's over, and you're coming down off of that, all that. Some guys use alcohol. That was me. Other guys couldn't do pot. But if you had a legal prescription, you could pass the test. So Bret Hart has been very adamant that when they started testing for marijuana, that it migrated people toward pharmaceuticals. I really think people, that's another podcast, another debate, but you're right. I mean, it was a culture of, oh, since I have a prescription, that means it's legal. Since alcohol is sold in stores, it's legal. Yes, that's all true. I've learned now, and with my wisdom of sobriety, you got to deal with the adrenaline dump in a much safer way.
Can you imagine if CBD was available back then? It would have been a game changer.
Say, I've never done CBD, and I was never a pot guy, but
well, no, but there's no euphoria Like you don't get high on CBD. Like CBD is going to, if you got a bunch of dogs, when one of your dogs gets old and he ain't running and jumping on the couch anymore, put a little CBD in his food, but he's running around like a puppy.
Gary told me, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, like that's I've got older folks in my circle who were like, I'm not doing that marijuana, and I just gave them a gummy one day, not a marijuana gummy, a CBD gummy. Man, what was that? Golly, I feel so much better. I mean, it's amazing that here's this natural thing that we criminalized, and listen, it is what it is. Conversation for another day, but CBD, I think, could have been so helpful to so many guys back then in a major way. It just, we weren't ready for it as a society. We didn't have the and our industry. Look, I'm not going to say we work 95 days in a row,
whatever it may be, but our schedule, we had a lot of in-ring time, made us who we are today, schedules and all that. But the ring was really hard, and I will say it till the day I die. That was a very physical, punishing ring, and it beat people up. Not maliciously did the WWF do that, but it was just, it held 6, 8, 10, 20 guys that weighed 300 pounds. It was built that way, but man, it was tough on the body. And so resulted into, like you said, sort of that culture, with the testing. It was, just again, the transitioning of our society as well as our industry.
So the Torch would say Jeff Jarrett will remain out of action for 6 weeks due to his back problems. He's currently in rehab. There are 3 discs that are abnormal and separated in the lower part of his back. Space actually exists between discs due to past injuries. The muscle spasms that result can throw his hips out of joint. His contract with the WWF runs through October of this year. So if Jarrett decides to leave the WWF, he would want to give notice in July. Rumors of him going to WCW sooner than that aren't true. So did your dad have a weekly appointment to talk with Wade, or?
Weekly? Would not be daily?
I mean, legitimately, this is so much detail compared to even Meltzer's report. I mean, he knows what's going on with your hips. He knows exactly how many vertebrae. If this was just we'll call it a scouting report, it would just say Jarrett's out with back injury.
Now, WWF got the medical report, so I'll give them that. Now, I don't know who talked to who on that, but I'm with you.
You think it was your dad, though?
They definitely had a relationship, an ongoing. I'll say that's what I'm saying, an ongoing relationship. Yes.
Do you remember there being a time when you were at your dad's house or he was at your house and you see him on the phone with Wade, or is that still clandestine? Like he's doing it, but he don't want anybody to know he's doing it.
Probably that. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, I'm sitting there thinking, did I ever really see him on the phone? I mean, in the office. Yeah, no.
What is the office saying to you? I mean, this is important just to add context, because you go back a few years ago, I guess after WrestleMania in New York, maybe it was 29, the night after, Dolph Ziggler cashed in his Money in the Bank, beat Alberto Del Rio to win the world title, got one of the biggest pops in the history of Monday Night Raw, but very quickly suffered an injury. I think it was a concussion. And I don't think it's necessarily his fault. Obviously, a concussion, nobody's like, fuck, I'm going to go concuss myself today. But I started to see people online say, oh, Vince must think he's injury prone. Now, I've never been there. I don't know if that's even a thing. But do you think guys get labeled as being quote unquote injury prone, and that means that Vince doesn't think he can bank on them anymore? Because whenever we hear wrestlers talk, they would always say, well, I was hurt, but I was working hurt because I didn't want to lose my spot. And I get that creatively, that, hey, I'm in a storyline, and if I got to go away, they got to find somebody else, and then I got to hope I fit in. Hell, just a few hours ago or less than that, you talked about, hey, man, I just wanted to get back the momentum I had before, and I was working my butt off to get there. So you know what it's like to think about losing your spot and trying to get back in there. I get that. Everybody agrees that's real. Do you think the so-and-so is injury prone is a real thing?
Oh, it definitely exists. I look, in my management role, you sort of got to figure out going through, okay, does this guy have a hangnail or is he really hurt? Yeah, that. Look, that goes for any pro sports as well. I mean, there are football players that, I mean, it's a legend. Excuse me, legendary. They didn't practice on Wednesday, didn't practice on Thursday. Oh wait, Saturday they've stretched out. He's now questionable, and he plays on Saturday. So there are definite injury prone guys and non-injury prone guys. This is the first time in my career, and I went through that car wreck in 92. I think I missed one Monday, and that was from whiplash. So this was a unique time in my career that I'm like, holy crap, I'm really on the shelf. Sent the medical reports in, had the calls and all that kind of stuff. It sucked. It really sucked. Again, figuring out for the, when I look back on it in hindsight, had this injury not happened, I don't know that I would have ever looked at it and said, okay, I'm too heavy. I don't care what it is. I will get hurt if I stay this heavy, period.
What was the ideal fighting weight for you? How many less?
220.
So you think 18, I'm not saying this to be funny, 18 pounds made the difference.
Oh, I'm positive.
Wow.
I felt entirely different. I mean, I felt entirely different at 225 or 227, 228. Losing 10 pounds, I could tell a difference. I could tell a difference in the ring. I could tell it. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the office, you know, they know what's going on. They have the medical report. Did you feel like I shot myself in the foot? It's bad timing. What if they lose confidence in me? Were you worried about them? I don't know, maybe not giving up on you, but hey, whatever we had thinking we could make him a top guy, his reliability, his durability may be called into question now.
I don't know if I thought that they were questioning my durability, because it, like I said, it's the first injury I'd ever had in my career.
But from their perspective, you're also the guy who walked out.
No. And so here's where my injury combined with the July walkout the year before, and hey, we gave this a shot. It's one thing to leave on top. Let me just use that as the lesson in the analogy. It's another thing to leave at in your house too, comparatively out of sight, out of mind at a Memphis house show. And so in my mind, again, I have the luxury of looking at it 20 years later or 25 years later. I beat myself up. I beat myself mentally into submission that, man, I was going nowhere with Ahmed, and now I'm injured, and now I miss Mania. Conrad, I convinced myself that I was not on Vince's radar anymore in a meaningful way. Without question, I convinced myself.
Did you have a conversation with your dad about that? Because this is a time where your dad's still talking to Vince every week, right?
I don't know that he was. Was he? Let me think. But no, I don't remember having our relationship, not in any kind of extravagant way, but when I had that IC run and often run and the Double J character and everything that went with it, you know, and like, when did he go to WCW? Was he already there? I don't know. I mean,
he was still getting a check from Vince even while he was taking the WCW check, but I don't think he was taking the WCW check until later in 96. I don't think it was early.
Factor into this in my recollection in any meaningful way. I knew that, again, I had the USWA situation, which I wasn't completely enamored with. Remember, he's still majority owner of that company. I wasn't really into going to work there, and he was wanting me to go, but I kind of felt, you know, a loyalty to there. But when I got injured, it was just such a weird time that I kind of went in, I don't say it's depressed, but I went into a hole that I'm like, God almighty, this could not have come at a worse time. And again, if you look at the roster during this time.
Let's time out right there. Let's talk about the roster, because that's what I wanted to get to next. Razor and Diesel are leaving. That's made known while you're hurting. It's also apparent that Mark Mero's coming in. and so is Mick Foley. So there's a ton of folks going left and right at a time where J.J. Dillon himself is going to be leaving and going to work for WCW. Now, there are the two constants that you've worked closely with Bruce, you've had your ups and downs with Vince, but man, it feels like the whole roster and talent relations, in fact, is just getting turned upside down, and you're just hearing about it from home. This has to be a pretty damn helpless feeling.
Yeah, that's unnecessarily helpless, because I had so much confidence in 95. I'll say that. And now I came back. Look, I might have known in my mind that it wasn't all my fault about the Ahmed situation, but still I was a part of that non-productive quasi storyline. And then I get hurt. And then, like you just said, Mero and Mankind, they're heels. I'm trying to think the other heels, but Goldust.
Mero comes in as a baby face.
Okay.
But Mankind's a heel.
Yeah, Mankind's a heel, and they were going to push him. Goldust, was this the Goldust Piper? They were going really strong on Goldust. I'm trying to think if there was a couple other heels. I just knew, we'll call it the spot, as you referred to earlier. Man, there was a ladder there, and me being on the shelf and the build toward WrestleMania, and there wasn't any dominant top heel, if I recall. I know Sid was there, I think, but it was a time that Triple H was coming up the ladder as well. It was a real, again, I'll go back to the transition mindset. Such a transition, Conrad, in the entire company.
Let's talk about Memphis here for a bit. The USWA would celebrate their 1000th show on WMC TV in Memphis on April 13th. They have some old clips they show of you being destroyed by Bill Dundee and Buddy Landell. They've even got when you were a referee, your debut against Tony Falk. Pretty cool deal to get a wrestling show to 1,000 episodes. And you cut a promo on the show saying it's the 10th anniversary of your debut and you're coming back for the title that Ahmed Johnson holds. An interesting relationship between the USWA and the WWF at this time. Meltzer would say the April 15th show in Memphis, which was billed as Channel 5 night with all seats being $5, saw the crowd boosted to nearly 1,200 and a house of 5,800. With Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett doing a 60-minute draw for the unified title in Jarrett's first match back since being out a few months after a serious back injury. The match was slow-paced, but the crowd was into it, and it had great heat for the final 12 minutes. Lawler and Jarrett did at least two other 60-minute draws in title matches, one of which was April 20th in Nashville, by which time Jarrett had won the title and begun a heel turn for the first time in his home territory. So walk me through this. Your first match back is 60 minutes with Lawler?
Think about that. Lawler's idea.
And in fairness, he knew y'all were going to do a lot of gaga and showbiz and
it's psychology.
Yeah.
I wonder if any of those exist online. But yes, they were slow and methodical, but Jerry's psychology, and again, he had been in the territory forever. At this point, I had been in there 10 years. So the people knew our personalities and we could get mileage out of everything. And man, you talk about learning how to work, but yeah, I remember Jerry saying, "Oh, how do you feel?" Whatever it was, a couple of weeks out. I'm like, a lot better. Once those spasms get out and I'm stretching and doing it. I mean, you talk about going to the letter. That's what I remember, that sports therapist doing the research on this, Conrad, or reviewing the research. I just can remember going, wow, that's kind of changed my whole mindset that I carry to this day about stretching. I mean, it really did. My whole mindset on stretching and low back and the different exercises that they taught me, and specifically how to isolate the low back stretching and all that. So yeah, the Kingfish, 60 minutes through. I remember our Nashville one might have been the best of the bunch. The Nashville Broadway, 60 minutes. It was, it's good.
It's like we were saying a minute ago, though, 60 minutes with Shawn Michaels is a lot different than 60 minutes with Jerry Lawler, right?
You think? Yes.
Well, just freestyling.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I mean, look, and I can sit here and honestly say in Nashville, Louisville, Evans, Memphis, if me and Shawn would have had 60 minutes or me and Jerry would have had 60 minutes, I can't say that the crowd reaction Jerry was so good at it. And like,
oh no, the crowd reaction Jerry Lawler's got. I'm just saying the in-ring style.
oh, for sure.
One guy's going to push you through the paces. The other's going to be very entertaining.
Well, and they're both entertaining, I think. But no, just and again, Lawler knew how to build, man.
Lawler knew how to do less with more.
Oh boy, did he.
Old school mentality versus Shawn is doing more with more. We're going to bump 182 times and be shot out of a cannon. Lawler's like Southern barbecue, slow.
Boy, he would do some false finish spots off of punches, and obviously he can punch, and I think I can punch, but God almighty, the referee would die. It was good, man. That's
what do you think of this decision to turn heel in Memphis, though? Is it just out of necessity because you're working with Lawler?
You know, if Conrad Thompson would have been Conrad Thompson and done a time warp back in the time, you'd about said, about damn time, guys. You telling two story. I mean, it was like, thank you. Finally, we're going to do this. I wanted to do it. I definitely wanted to be a heel in my own territory because I'd seen it work for WWF.
Let's talk about the rumor at the time. Another story, this is from the Observer. Another story floating around is that Jarrett will work out the remainder of his WWF contract, which is believed to expire around November, and by working for this group and then jump to WCW. As best we can tell, the WWF is still expecting Jarrett to return over the next month or two, but there is at least smoke to the fire in regard to eventually going to WCW. So ultimately, you call Dave a fiction writer, but he wound up being on the money here. Do you think, I mean, do you remember, did you have a conversation with somebody in WCW? Were you talking to guys who were over there? Was your dad back channeling hypotheticals to EB? What can you tell us?
I wish I could remember the conversation that I had. And see, I just wonder who would have been with, because I don't, if JJ was already gone, if you would ask me before the show started, JJ, whoever, but I remember post-Mania, it wasn't like, hey, Jeff, you ready to come back? There was none of that, like, they know I'm working in Tennessee. There wasn't any sense of urgency at all. Now, this is April. My contract was always an October rollover, even through the China days. That's just how I signed my first one in mid-October, and it was that way until 2001 on my expiration date, sometime in October. There was just no sense of urgency. I think that's the best way to phrase it. So I don't remember how I sent my first feeler to Eric and when that exact first conversation was. I want to say it wasn't until July or August that because I was just kind of sitting things out. My contractor license, Conrad, remember that story that, you know, the contractor, my dad's up in building and all that. So the wrestling business was there, Puerto Rico, Japan. I think Germany was running during that time. And I was just kind of looking at the landscape again. This is before kids and all that. So I don't know who the back channel, it wasn't my father, candidly, because he likes to talk a lot, but I'm just trying to think if it was Scott or Kevin or who the first contact was. I don't know.
So you win back the unified title, and then you align yourself with the famous referee Hungwell Frank Morrell and his assistant, along with Tony Falk, for the win over Lawler. And the gimmick is that Morrell is your yes man, your future Slick Johnson, if you will. And Tony Falk is your chauffeur. This is good shit. On April 22nd, you beat Brian Christopher. And then on April 26th, then Troy Vader appears and teams with Brian Christopher to beat you and Mo. It draws 2,100 fans, $10,800. You're teaming with Mo to take on Brian Christopher and Vader. This is some weird stuff here, is it not?
It was Memphis, pal. It was Memphis.
The Observer would say on May 13th, it appears they're now attempting to position Jeff Jarrett to start a major run as the territory's top star. The idea is to make him a strong heel, where for a while the build would be towards the inevitable babyface turn. Reports are that Jarrett doesn't want to return to the WWF right now, although everyone is denying the rumors that Jarrett is now the booker. although there is little doubt he is at least a strong influence when it comes to booking his own programs. Jarrett is being given his own entourage, which will consist of the boss man, aka Ronnie P. Gossett III, his personal advisor, Frank Morrell, and the errand boy, Tony Falk. So, a lot to unpack here. Were you booking this?
Not the lead. I'm trying to think where Randy Hales, and he'll probably shoot me a text after this episode. I don't remember. Man, I probably should have done a little research with him on this or others in Memphis. But if you remember on all the vignettes, Ronnie P was a part of the one when I went to Buddy Lee Attractions, and Frank was the one by Tootsie's, and Tony Falk was the one out in front of the Ryman. So in the vignettes, the first go around, and here we are a year later, I can remember, and this is where, Conrad, I wish I had a better recall that was I subliminally trying to, I guess you could say, show WWF, hey, this is what an entourage looks like for the Double J character. I don't know. I all the timing of all this, my injury, I don't have the best recollection on specifics and all this, but we went with the entourage here. And look, for me to say that I was the lead booker is not accurate, but for me to say that I didn't have nothing to do with that, that ain't the truth either. It was I maybe a big part of booking my own stuff.
The Torch would say Jeff Jarrett has his hand in booking the USWA these days, and there are no set plans for him to return to the WWF. He was unhappy with how he was being used upon his WWF return, so after his injury, he told the WWF rather than return and be disgruntled, he'd be happier just working for the USWA unless a better position in the WWF opened up for him. The WWF was agreeable. His contract expires in the fall, at which point he could conceivably jump to WCW. Is that accurate?
I remember my attorney, just as you were reading that, because right during that time in the entourage, no, so it's not completely accurate, but I knew that I wanted, we'll call it a better spot, but I also knew they weren't showing any sense of urgency to like, hey, come back. We got this, this, and this. It kind of just petered out until around I started talking to Eric, because it wasn't like, hey, I'm ready to come back. And they weren't like saying, hey, Jeff, come on back. Again, it was an odd time for me.
So you're just going to wind up sitting out the rest of your contract. How are you paid for this, if at all?
And not paid at all. And again, remember the contractor situation. And so, no, but I wasn't, Vince certainly did. The contract was guaranteed 10 dates at $150 a piece. So Kevin's sweet money.
But I mean, you weren't delusional. You didn't think that you could get Memphis hot again. You're just biding your time out, trying to perfect a character and get ready for the WCW run.
Well, or for Vince to call me back. It depends on what month you're talking. If we're talking April, May, June-ish, I'm thinking, okay, Vince is going to call me back.
Around the same time, there's a cat named Dwayne Johnson who's been hired by the WWF. He's going to be coming down to the USWA to help get experience. I don't know how that ever worked.
How about that?
But it is interesting that the WWF is sending talent, whether it's developmental guys like this greenhorn Dwayne Johnson, who'd he ever beat, and then top guys to work the territory like Undertaker and Bret Hart. But this is where you, a WWF contracted wrestler, at least according to the dirt sheets, is basically refusing to go back. But you're saying that's not exactly how you remember it, because if that's accurate, it's so weird to think, hey, we got this guy under contract who don't want to come back. Go on down there and he'll teach you how to wrestle. Now, he ain't coming back to work here. He's refused. But don't worry, we're going to send Mo and Vader and Undertaker and Bret Hart. You'll get plenty of reps, but
that's where
Jarrett's not happy. That's a weird deal. The whole thing's weird.
Well, that's where the fiction writing comes in. It was not that. That was where, again, we had a working business relationship. Vince and my father have always had, you know, I'm not saying best buds or not. Look, they had a working relationship, and they would send talent down, and we didn't have to pay them an extravagant amount. They had I'll call it a good, healthy relationship, but I was, as a talent, I was working for the home territory. And again, it was, hey, you going to hire me back or not? And I'm thinking, wait, what the hell's going on? It's just that transition whole deal. I can see a young Jeff going, well, damn, I did an hour with Lawler. And now here's this entourage gimmick we got going on. Bruce, Pat, y'all want to bring me back? Again, it was, and I was sort of educated in that mindset that get the call. You start knocking on their door. Zero leverage.
Let them come to you, you're saying.
Yeah. Yes.
So in the meantime, you can't help but watch what's going on the national landscape. And even all these years later in 2022, I think you were one of the last guys still watching Ring of Honor. I mean, you watch Ring of Honor every week. You watch Impact you would text me, hey man, did you see what so-and-so did? I don't even know who you're talking about, Jeff, but you were watching it.
Yep.
And around this time, you start to see what will become the NWO. Scott Hall shows up, looks like an invasion. Everybody's talking about it. Kevin Nash shows up. They start talking about a third man. And there's lots of people online speculating, hey, Jarrett's contract's coming due. He's never been here in WCW. This could work. You had to see what was going on with that and think, I know that I had a good run with Doink, and working with Ahmed was what it was. But buddy, if I could never have to wrestle Bastion Booger or Mo again, and I could do this, that's the more appealing option, right?
Well, I'd love to sit here and say that I had aspirations of being the third man.
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but the NWO, you could tell this is hot. This is going to be hot.
I love the Nitro setup from the very beginning. Just the vibe. It was live. It was.
And why wouldn't you be the third man? You're in the goddamn clique. You've told us that. We know that.
And the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
I was actually the leader of the Horseman, Conrad.
Oh God. Can we just not? Let's do that another day.
You don't want to talk about this?
No, I listen. I know you don't listen to the shows, but just yesterday, 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff came out, and we covered the fallout from Super Brawl 97, the Nitro right after. And the Nitro right after is where Arn Anderson and Ric Flair formally introduced and announced that you were officially a Horseman. You had earned your spot by winning at pay-per-view at Super Brawl 97. And Mongo said, hey, I don't have to like you to accept you as family. And so, yeah, you shook his hand, and there it was. You were a Horseman, whatever that means. But at the time, Flair wasn't wrestling. He's hurt. Arn's not wrestling. He's hurt. Benoit's been stretchered out of there. He's hurt. So it was down to you and Mongo. So saying, okay.
So if it's down to me and Mongo, it's pretty safe to say, it's not even a stretch. It's safe to say that in 1997, Jeff Jarrett was the leader of the Four Horsemen,
You shut your mouth or I'm going to quit the show.
Conrad,
I'm going to quit the show.
I was not just a member, I was the Four Horsemen.
Goodbye, Jeff.
Leader. Conrad. Folks, if you're not watching this on video, he just literally dial toned me. He just put his image up. Conrad, you still got to be there. Hey, pal, I was the leader of the Four Horsemen in 1997.
I won't let you come on this program and disparage the good damn name of the Horseman, Double J.
Listen here, Foghorn Leghorn. Don't give me any of that sass because that's it. I was the leader of the Four Horsemen in 1997. Rick wasn't wrestling. Arn wasn't wrestling. Mongo, are you saying I wasn't a better?
Listen, the idea that you're calling yourself the leader of the Four Horsemen, I don't know if it'll reach, but I sure hope you go fuck yourself because this is awful. I mean, this is terrible. It
is a wonderful time of year.
So you've been working with Jesse James.
See that right there? That's the Four Horsemen sign. It is. That's the Four Horsemen sign.
Oh, I'm sure you learned
all
it.
All I gotta do is turn it upside down, and it's for life because it's too sweet.
You need to stop all this. You're taking it too far. So Jesse James Armstrong does a loser leaves town match against you on June 10th, and he loses because he's headed to the CWA in Austria. And I think that's the last time you and Brian work together until the WWF in 98, right?
I think so. Yes. Yes.
And so here's some rumors from June 17th. Quote, rumors are flying it'll be Jeff Jarrett since Vince McMahon on the WWF hotline brought up Jarrett's name with Diesel and Ramon as expecting him to join WCW. Jarrett gave notice to Titan and is working out his notice in USWA, and he is WCW bound. However, his WWF contract doesn't expire until the fall, so it probably won't be him. The Torch would say it wasn't an entirely bad week for WCW in the roster department as they locked in Jeff Jarrett on June 4th. Jarrett gave his notice to the WWF and received a conditional release. He cannot work for WCW until the end of October when his contract expires. McMahon acknowledged Jarrett's departure last week on the WWF 900 line. Jarrett was not happy with his push upon his return to the WWF late last year. So everybody keeps saying that. Were you happy with your push? Or were you disappointed because you felt like I left so hot and they didn't get me anywhere close?
I was disappointed. I had heard about the guaranteed money. My legal advice was very strong. At the very least, you don't want to re-sign this contract. You don't want it to re-up. There's no money in it.
Yeah.
So at the very least,
get a new deal.
Yes. At the very, very least. And that was my attorney, Atlanta based. He gave me that knowledge, but it was again, it was such a set of circumstances that they knew I wasn't happy, but I wasn't dumb enough to think, hell, Conrad, I knew they weren't happy with the return. It didn't get over. I'm sure in my positioning, it was, hey, man, if you would have put me in a little bit different spot, but they kind of knew that too, but that's the spot they wanted me in.
I just want to add context to what we're talking about because I said a sentence, and Lord knows I say a lot of sentences on the show, but I just want to run through this one again. Vince McMahon goes on the WWF hotline where he promotes the hotline on his television.
Yep.
And you call in and you pay, I don't know, $1.99 a minute or whatever it is to hear a recorded message from Vince McMahon.
Yep.
Saying he expects you to join WCW.
Yep. Different era, my man.
How crazy is that?
It is. And this is pre Mr. McMahon.
Yes. This is just regular old Vince, the announcer.
If I was going to say, I wouldn't say regular old because he was, in my opinion, because Hulkamania was dead and gone.
Yes.
Vince was the face of the company.
Yes.
Once Hulk went away, by far. It wasn't Brett. It wasn't Warrior. It wasn't Shawn. It wasn't Lex. It was Vince. He was the face of the company.
So finally, you give your notice. Talk me through how all that happens. Is it just your attorney sends over a document? Is that it?
It's legal to legal. We are not. We are asking for whatever the legal mumbo jumbo is. Yes. And I knew kind of in the back of my mind the answer I'd get, but I know I know Jeff's brain. I certainly know Jeff's brain way back then, a little hopeful that they'd say, hey, why don't we let's do a new deal here.
And they didn't.
None. Well, I wasn't going to wait around long enough, but there was no,
you were doing the old fake takeaway, hoping that they would go, well, no, hang on.
I wasn't doing the fake because I knew that look, there's going to be an option. But I'd love to have got in a bidding war. That didn't happen.
Did you feel like there were promises not kept on their end?
Promises is too strong a word. Opportunity would be, man, they could have given me a lot of better opportunity. Also knew the injury kind of screwed the pooch, but the opportunity, but again, you're asking somebody at my age now, 25
I'm asking
years.
With the benefit of hindsight. Like, Do you think, let's go a little level deeper. Do you think that he lost confidence in you when you walked out?
I don't think Vince did. I think Bruce, and to this, it's no secret, Bruce has always had, when he works there, a lot of influence on Vince. Bruce was had not forgiven me.
Yeah.
Period. And I'm sure Pat as well. I don't want to put it all on Bruce.
So when your name comes up, here come the shovels.
That's the Conrad way of saying it. But yes, I wasn't getting any extra added boost when my realization had come that,
well,
those good, look, in 94, those good agent reports, and because Pat would come up to me, hey, I heard you and Razor tore the house down in so-and-so, or hold this and that, I was getting Vince was hearing great feedback from road agents and Bruce and Pat. And I knew that was non-existent when I came back. What were you about to say, Conrad? You started to smile.
Well, just because, you sort of said, oh, well, because when I said, here come the shovels, you're like, oh, that's the way Conrad says it. But I know you and I have had conversations before where I would say this guy or that guy, and one of us might have a reaction. And I'm not going to say it's exactly, oh, fuck that guy. But it ain't far off where we've had a dealing with him that was less than awesome. And I'm sure the folks who put a bunch of time and effort, energy into a plan, and then it's thrown for a loop, they're going to take that personally. Like, if I could spend all this time on this guy and he's going to do everything we ask, or spend it on that guy. And
yes,
I'm sure that it's not easy to be in the Bruce position then or now, because you got to serve all these different masters. You want to keep the whole roster happy, but realistically, that ain't your job. Your job's to keep one guy happy.
Exactly.
And that feels like more than a full-time job.
Yeah. And impossible to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you wait out your notice, and the USWA runs the last blast at the Coliseum. This is going to be the last weekly show at the Mid-South Coliseum. Obviously, the business is way, way down, but this feels like the real end of an era, not just for Memphis wrestling, but for your family. Maybe we'll do a longer episode about it some other time, but what do you remember about that last blast at the Coliseum?
Well, and I think I've got my mind's right on this, but I think Memphis was the last building in the territory. Jerry Lawler's mother sold tickets at the Coliseum. And again, we had been there since 77 from Cook Convention Center. I mean, a long time, almost 20 years, whatever it may be, but they were paid a flat rent. Anyway, we just could not economically survive. So push came to shove, and we knew we weren't going to get a new deal. I think this is the time until we walked, and we had to move to the Pipkin building, which is on the Memphis State, the fairgrounds, which is maybe 400 yards from Mid-South Coliseum. It's on the same plot of land. But yeah, the last blast, and tried to promote it up and all the history in there. But yeah, I mean, again, that last episode was the final nail in WCCW. We had a lot of nails going in the coffin for USWA because the business model no longer worked, period.
It's pretty remarkable to think about what's happening here. I mean, you look at July 1st and you're teaming with Goldust to take on Brian Christopher and Doug Gilbert at a flea market.
Yep.
The night before, the WWF ran 6,200 fans in Pittsburgh. And then Ahmed Johnson gets brought down. I can't believe this is a thing.
Yep.
You're working with Ahmed Johnson here in Memphis. And this goes against every version of what we've heard of Vince McMahon for a long, long time. You even work with Sid for the unified title. It goes 4 minutes until Tony Falk, interferes, and that's all she wrote. But it's fascinating to me to think about, how zeroed in Vince was, that Memphis ain't my enemy. Ted Turner's my enemy.
Sure.
WCW's my enemy. The Observer has this on August 14th. Jeff Jarrett quit USWA and will sit out until starting with WCW in early October. The Torch would say Jeff Jarrett quit the USWA 2 weeks ago, citing creative differences with Jerry Lawler as the primary reason. Even though Jarrett's father, Jerry Jarrett, owns half the USWA along with Lawler, and the promotion could use him as they try to build an audience at the Expo Center in Memphis, Tennessee, he quit the promotion 4 to 6 weeks earlier than he had planned. With his October start date with WCW, his stay in the USWA was temporary as it was, and was mostly to keep the local promotion and to stay in quote unquote ring shape. Frank Morrell, one of Jarrett's on-air lackeys, also left the promotion. The USWA announced his departure on the August 3rd live TV show. So what happened? Was Lawler the reason he left?
No, it wasn't Lawler. I mean, I don't recall. I think it was money. Was one thing. Well, let me say at the very top would be, I got a WCW deal and wanted to get ready for that. And again, we were changing buildings, no money in the territory. Trying to think, Conrad, was Larry Burton, some Memphis history, was the ownership about to change in 96? So this would have been August of 96. I don't know when, because it shut down. And anyway, this is a whole nother little podcast that we'll do the research on this, but it wasn't, I don't remember me and Lawler coming to a head over any kind of issues, other than I was going to WCW, and this was a quote unquote WWF developmental deal or developmental territory. It was for sure. This was, for lack of a better word, a WWF developmental area. And I was about to go to work for, as you just said, the enemy. And I think it was time for me to move on. I think it was that simple.
So September 30th, 1996, Doc Hendricks hosts a segment in which it reveals that the roadie, aka Jesse James, was the real Double J. I'm sure you're watching this happen at home. The timing is pretty curious. As we said, Memphis is not the problem. Ted Turner is the problem. And right before, remember, everybody now is saying, oh, Jeff's in WCW in October. Jeff's in WCW in October. Jeff's in WCW in October. Let's get Jesse James back in here on September 30th and let everybody know Jeff Jarrett's full of shit.
Yep.
The Monday Night War, Daddy. Here it is.
And live and in living color. Still kind of bizarre.
Did he give you a heads up? Did you know, or did you find out like everybody else did?
Found out like everybody else. Happy that Brian got a job.
Of course.
Tickled to death.
I mean, how could you not? I mean, you got to know when you see that, hey, this ain't Brian. This is Brian trying to get a gig. This is Vince, and I am leaving. And this was his story, and I didn't want to do it, so I left. It's his business. But at least part of you's got a smile, like, okay.
It advertised me.
Yes.
The Double J is advertised on Monday Night Raw. Period.
Yes. It's amazing, man.
It is, man. It's really cool.
If this whole podcast shit don't work out, if this whole baseball shit don't work out, you should go become a professional bridge builder, because you'll build them, tear them down, and these some bitches will pay you to build it back.
How about that, pal?
It's really remarkable.
No, it's not.
I love it. I mean, think about that. Think about it's just, well, either way, we've told the story. Let's do some questions.
Calling me Forrest Gump.
No, I'm not. I am saying you found yourself in some really good spots. So yeah. John wants to know, how did it feel emotionally being back in the USWA? What was really the final months of the territory? What were you and your dad's thoughts seeing the once mighty promotion limping along? And did you think anything could have saved it?
Look, again, hindsight's 2020, and reading the research and all that. And that I do remember, again, wrestling every Saturday night at the Nashville Fairgrounds, sold out 2,500, whatever it may be, going to a building that seats 8,000 to 10,000, the Minnesota Auditorium, and me being introduced as USWA champion. That was all a kind of a feel good. I get hurt and then come back, and me and Lawler are doing 60-minute draws and all that. But that summer was like, and that young kid, as you said, Dwayne Johnson, but it had, I say all this to say, the glory days of the territory had been gone since the late 80s. But by this point, it really was a WWF developmental territory. That's what it was. There wasn't any nostalgia, feel good that I had. Maybe others, but I didn't have that. Because it wasn't long. When did Kurt come down and that group of guys? 98, 97?
Yeah, 98.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I'm saying is we're talking, this is a WWF developmental era.
99 was his year, but he starts getting into developmental in 98.
Got it.
As far as, I mean, I think I have that timeline right.
Yeah.
Here's one from not Michael McClanahan, a wrestling historian. Who did he want to work with that he didn't get to because of his departures in 95 and 96? Was there a talent that was on that roster, that new generation era, that in hindsight, you're like, man, I could have tore it up with so-and-so, whoever that was?
So I had worked, I can't, like Savio Vega, I'd got to work a little bit with him, but I knew that our styles, and he was so red hot, at TNT in Puerto Rico. Man, he was red hot way back when he first got going. But I can't say that anybody in that era. I mean, I did have a few matches with Bret Hart, but never a program. So at the very top sort of my wish list would have been we'll call it and we had that Raw match, but a program with Bret would have been nice.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees with that. I mean, you guys had some matches, but there wasn't really a program.
Yep.
Yeah. So next week we are going back in time to talk about a pretty classic old school deal. We're talking about the Moondogs versus you and Jerry Lawler 30 years ago.
Gosh.
Back in 1992, it was voted Feud of the Year by Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the Wrestling Observer. So not just the quote unquote kayfabe magazines, but the actual insiders thought, man, nobody did it as well as you guys did with the Moondogs. So I got to admit, that's something that I missed. I've seen a lot of clips and highlights of some of the crazy brawls and whatnot, but this will be the first time that I think this has probably been talked about on a big platform in great detail. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely. I'm excited about this. Look, you don't even have to be a wrestling fan. If you're a fan of ECW or even the modern day GCW, Effie, the Clout Vampire, I think that he wears that name well. I came in, beat his ass, and hadn't heard nary a word from them fellers over there. But if you're a fan of GCW, if you're a fan of ECW, when you look back at the original concession stand brawl of Lawler and Dundee and others, and then this was another concession stand brawl, me and Lawler against the Moondogs, and how that happened and how that development and the strategy. Look, we're not some Apple or Google corporate entity, but the mindset that went into with my dad and Lawler and like, hey, we've got to try something different. We've got to spice things up. We've got to get these guys. And the Moondogs had been in the territory before, and they were coming back in, and Larry Latham. And anyway, just the whole mindset that we're going to shoot this angle, and it popped the territory. And that's those kind of lessons for me as a businessman were invaluable. The value of no matter what you've done the previous 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 weeks, if you shoot the right angle this Monday night or this Wednesday night or this Friday night, and it's executed well, it will create attention, it will create traction, and you can build from there. That's what this angle did. And again, going through this history, it'll take me back to that Chicago date with Game Changer Wrestling where the guy walked up to me and said, have you ever seen a death match live? Well, pal, can you go watch some Moondog matches? But no, it's going to be fun, Conrad. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm sure we will. Anything else that we can talk about today? Did we cover it as thoroughly as possible?
Hey,
what? Talk about your departure?
Oh no, we definitely covered it. I'm looking at my schedule over here on my whiteboard. We've got NWA coming up this month, Crockett Cup.
That's right. I'm actually going to be there. I know it's March 19th and March 20th right there in Nashville. I won't be able to attend the 19th. I've got a big little get-together party deal here at the house. We had to reschedule our New Year's Eve party, so we're going with like an 80s theme on March 19th. But March 20th, I think me and a little caravan of my friends are going to ride up and check out the Crockett Cup night too, man. Excited to know you're going to be there and be a part of it.
Don't bring Cassio.
Okay. If he ain't coming, I ain't coming either. So
Oh, come on now.
we'll order on Fight. We'll go to pickaffight.com and make sure that we check out what you and Mr. Aldis and Mr. Cardona are up to.
Hey, I got the big event this weekend, Saturday. So I'll see lots of ad-free folks. I think I mentioned it earlier, but looking forward to, it's called the big event up in right by LaGuardia Airport. So
Huge event every year.
yeah, my March is super busy. My April's super busy, and we got a lot going on. Baseball team is cranking up. So exciting. You going to release any more news about April 1st this week?
Maybe on social, not here today.
Okay.
But I will tell you this. People are going to be happy. Can we agree?
I'm excited. I'll just say that.
I'm excited too. Supershowlive.com. Pick up your tickets right now. Make plans to join us in Dallas. WrestleCon at end at 5:00. You can scoot right over, hang out with us, and do a little VIP meet and greet, little happy hour Jones. It's going to be a good time. And then, of course, one heck of a show. But more importantly, if you can't be there to join us live, go order the pay-per-view right now. Here for, I don't know, a couple weeks or so. When you pre-order at supershowlive.com, you can, of course, watch the show live on April 1st. You can also watch it on demand. But when you pre-order, you get a pretty dang cool collectible, a Jeff Hardy trading card. And for those of you who are actually going to be attending, we got some big surprises for you. Stay tuned. Supershowlive.com is where you want to be. Until next week, he is at Real Jeff Jarrett. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. We are at My World Pod, and we're out of time. We'll see you next week talking all things Moondogs 1992 right here on My World.
Peace.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.